Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's video is going to be a September ARCs reading vlog. September is such a busy month for releases and I have a lot of ARCs to get through. So let's just introduce the books really quickly before we get into the reading vlog. First up, coming out September 2nd, we have Breathe In, Bleed Out by Brian McAuley. I'll also be reading The Macabre by Kosoko Jackson. This one comes out on the 9th, and then also coming out the 9th we have The Burial Tide by Neil Sharpson. So we are going to kick off this vlog with the release date that is coming up first. So starting off with Breathe In, Bleed Out by Brian McAuley. This is supposed to be, I think, a little bit funny, a little bit of a horror comedy, I'm not too sure, but it's about a yoga retreat gone terribly wrong, so I'm very intrigued. Let's get to reading. So I am now about 50% of the way through Breathe In, Bleed Out, and I'm having so much fun with this book so far. It's just a fun slasher, and I mean that in the way that it's hitting a lot of classic slasher tropes that are enjoyable to a horror reader. But this book is also genuinely very funny at moments, so it's doing a really good blend between funny moments and relatable moments. The character work in here is great, and then of course the slashing is pretty gruesome. So in this book we are following main character Hannah, and she has had pretty much the worst year that anyone could ever imagine. A year ago, before this book takes place, her and her boyfriend go on a hike together. He proposes to her and then he ends up dying in an accident, and she almost loses her life as well. So when this book opens up, she's not having a good time. She's not doing well. She's struggling at her job as a medical resident, and she's grieving the loss of the man she thought she would spend the rest of her life with. She also has a lot of grief and also guilt about this situation and about the things that happened during that trip. She's also cut herself off from her friends and just has really been going in a downward spiral. However, her birthday rolls around and she's really not looking forward to it because the trip that her and her fiance went on when he passed away was for her birthday, and she's not looking forward to it. However, one of her friends reaches out to her, doesn't take no for an answer, and invites her to this wellness retreat in Joshua Tree. Hannah does not want to go to this, but eventually, after an incident in the workplace that has her really evaluating the course her life has been going down, she accepts, and she and a bunch of other friends all go to this retreat in Joshua Tree. It's Hannah and 4 other friends. They've been friends since college. They've kind of grown apart a little bit, and Hannah's self-isolation after the incident didn't help with that, but they're hoping this is going to be a great retreat to just relax, get off the grid, reform those friendship bonds, and for Hannah, maybe do a little bit of soul searching and some emotional healing as well. So they get to this retreat. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's in the middle of the desert, and it's also a very unplugged experience. So they have to turn in their phones, but there's no cell reception anyway, and they have to be dedicated to this spiritual retreat, opening their mind up with things like yoga and meditation and hot springs and saunas. Hannah is a medical resident and she is a big proponent of science, so she is not very optimistic when she starts trying all of these things, feels like they're not going to help her at all, but she's pleasantly surprised as they start going through the retreat, and she starts feeling pretty healed by this experience. However, this experience turns out to be too good to be true when bodies start piling up and people at this retreat start to be picked off one by one. So like I said at the beginning, this is a very fun slasher. We get a lot of time at the beginning building up Hannah and her relationships with other people and her friends, really fleshing fleshing them out into characters that we can't help but root for, some of them more than others, but they all feel very real. And of course, they're all Hannah's friends. So as people start dying one by one, they start getting picked off. We have an emotional attachment to them. Even the least likable of her friends, we have an attachment. I love getting that emotional attachment from a thriller because I feel like it really ups the stakes. When you care about a lot of the characters, you're excited for the kills in a slasher way. You can't wait to see what like the next kill scene is because there are some creative kills in here, but you're also genuinely worried for the characters. So that sense of tension is great. The sense of humor is great as well. And I'm having a good time overall with this one. I feel like the next 50% is going to ramp up even more with the frequency of the kills as our characters start to figure out something's actually really going wrong at this retreat, and they'll have to try and plan an escape when all the odds are against them. So I'm gonna keep reading this one. I'll check back in later when I've finished. It is a very gloomy afternoon outside. It's the perfect time to talk about horror, and I did end up finishing Breathe In, Bleed Out by Brian McAuley, and I had a lot of fun with this one. In the author's note, McAuley talks about how Scream was such an influential movie for him and one of the inspirations to write slashers, including this book. And I do think that's a really great example because while we do have a masked killer, we don't exactly know who it is. It's kind of a whodunit as well, trying to figure out who is behind the mask. It's not like Jason or most of Jason or Freddy where we know who the slasher is, we know who they're impersonating, and we know who they're trying to be with their getup, with their costume. But like Ghostface, you're really trying to figure out who could have done this, who is doing this, and how to make it stop. So I really enjoyed this one. It was a lot of fun. It did have kind of smatterings of the paranormal. I say smatterings because it's kind of like, is it or is it not paranormal? Because at the beginning of this book, one of the issues that Hannah is dealing with is that she is seeing these hallucinations of her dead fiance, and she chalks this up to just really bad grief-induced hallucinations. But as things start happening at this retreat, she's still seeing Ben, her fiance, and then she's seeing another figure that feels very ghostly. She's kind of wondering now, are these still hallucinations? Is there actually a person picking off people one by one? Is it a person? Is it this character of legend that she's been hearing about? There's all these ghost stories and lore that's going into the ground and the area where this resort is set up. And this was just a really fun time. I definitely think for some of the kills, one of them in particular having to deal with a yoga studio room really remind me of kind of the Final Destination Rube Goldbergian sort of contraptions for the kills. So this one was a lot of fun. If you're a slasher fan, go ahead and pick this up. This author might be on your radar already. He's written the Candy Cane Kills series, which I need to check out. Those are Christmas slashers, and then there's another one having to deal with a horror movie. So I'm so excited that this author is now on my radar. Breathe In, Bleed Out comes out September 2nd, so make sure you go and check this one out, whether you buy it from your local bookstore or check it out via your library. This was a really fun read, and if you're a slasher fan, I think you'll really enjoy what Brian McAuley has to offer the genre. So next up, we are moving on to The Macabre by Kosoko Jackson, and this is A Picture is Worth 1,000 Nightmares. It's a standalone novel blending art history, time and globe-hopping adventure, dark horror, and fantasy about 10 cursed paintings and the lengths people will go to collect them, destroy them, or be destroyed. So So I am about 40% of the way through the Macabre, and I would definitely say this one definitely leans more fantasy than horror. It's a fantasy with horror elements rather than a horror with fantasy elements. So we have our main character Lewis, and he's an artist, and at the beginning of this book he's going through a rough time. His mother has just died and his career doesn't really have the momentum that he hoped it would. However, he soon gets this really big break when the British Museum contacts him and invites him to this program slash competition where he can enter in a painting that represents his art style, and if the curators like it enough, they will put it in the British Museum. This is a huge honor. It could really put his name on the map. So Lewis accepts. He picks a painting, brings it to the museum, and there he learns he has actually not been selected for this competition at all. It was just a ruse to bring him to the museum because it turns out that he has some magic, and the British Museum, people who work at the British Museum, really need his help harnessing his magic to help them with some magical paintings. There is a set of paintings called the Macabre. There are 9 pieces. There's a rumored 10th piece in this collection, and each one of these paintings has very dark and destructive powers. Now Lewis, with his powers, he has this clairvoyant ability through some of his paintings where he goes into a fugue state as he paints, and those have like some predictive qualities. He can kind of foretell some aspects about the future, but he can also enter into these paintings, and while he's inside of this painting, he can gather information that can be used once he leaves the painting to help stop the powers of the painting, so it just turns into a regular painting and doesn't have any of these negative world-shattering powers. So he joins forces with these people who work at the British Museum, and he is off on a quest to hunt down these paintings and dismantle them, disable them, make them so no one can use their powers for evil. So this is a pretty interesting and unique premise, and all of the paintings in this collection called the Macabre, that's where the horror elements kind of come into play. They all depict very dark subject matter, and the effects that they have on the world and the people around them are very dark as well. So I definitely think this is such a creative idea. It almost feels a little bit like National Treasury or Indiana Jones-esque, because we have a character that is on a quest for objects of both like museum value and then also value and power that could kind of change the world. The issue is, for me at this point in time, I'm really worried about the pacing. 40% of the way in, we have seen 2 of these paintings, and Lewis and some other people helping him have tracked down 2 paintings, and there are a lot more paintings to go. So I'm nervous about the flow and the pacing of this one because it is a standalone. There just feels like there's so much more ground to cover, and then also, while we have seen these 2 paintings, I haven't really gotten a sense for those stakes yet. We know that there's high stakes. The people who introduce Lewis to this world of magic and magical paintings, magical abilities, they tell Lewis that this is a matter of life and death with like worldly deadly consequences. However, other than that conversation, I don't really feel that level of high stakes just yet. I'm sure with each painting, the stakes and the abilities of the paintings are going to level up, but just right now, I'm not feeling that sense of urgency that I feel like I'm supposed to. And then the other big thing at this point is that the magic, there's not really a magic system. It feels like in a lot of ways in a traditional, I'm gonna kind of compare it to like a magical school setting, especially in like middle grade, where we have a protagonist who realizes that he or she can do magic, and there's this whole separate magical world living concurrently with the regular world. In a younger work like middle grade, you would then see the protagonist attend a school or maybe get a teacher who will teach them the ropes, and then you kind of build off that world building, learn how the magic works alongside our main character. Now this one is adult, and Lewis is an adult, and the way that he gets thrown into this world is very fast. He buys into this world with magic super fast, doesn't ask a lot of questions, and as he he's gathering information, I just feel like we don't have enough information about the magic system. I don't know what the rules are. I don't know exactly what is possible. At this point, it does seem like anything is possible except for bringing people back from the death and healing magic. So at this point in this story, I would really like more of an explanation of the limitations of magic. Is there a limit to what a person can do? Like, is it like physical exertion where you only have so much left in the tank? Like, what are the restrictions and rules, and how do you cast magic? How do you cast spells? We're just as much in the dark alongside Lewis as to how exactly all of this magic works. Alongside that, I feel like there's some other world building things where it's not really explained. I just feel like if I were Lewis, I would need a lot more information to give up my life to this cause and immediately jump into this quest. So I wish there were some more things that were explained. It's a little too fast paced in terms of introducing this whole new magical world. I feel like we needed at least one like training or learning montage before we started getting into the quests, because I just feel a little lost as to what this magic system can do and who the key players are other than Lewis and his handler and his handler's handler. That could change as I dive further into this book, and I do really hope that is the case, because this is such an interesting premise, and I do kind of like the darker heist aspects of this one. I'm hoping just for a little more explanation about how the magic works, the significance of these paintings, and what exactly they can do if placed in the wrong hands. And then I also am hoping for just a little bit more characterization throughout the book. So I'm gonna keep reading this one, and I'll check back in later, probably when I'm done with it. So I finished the Macabre, and unfortunately, I just don't think that this book was the right fit for me as a reader. I don't think it's necessarily a bad book. I think there's definitely some people that are going to really enjoy this one, but it didn't just really hit that horror fantasy blend that I was looking forward to. The gripes that I had about the characterization and then also the lack of world building and magic system really continued throughout this whole entire story, and I do feel like at the end Lewis just feels very, very young. I know this author has written a lot of YA, and it feels like he is more young than the 30-something college graduate he is supposed to be. Also, there was a romance in here, and I'm not necessarily one to automatically not like a book if it has romance, but I really did feel like it overwhelmed this narrative, and it was very insta-lovey. It felt so immediate and unbelievable, and because we didn't really get that sense of characterization, I just didn't buy into this love story or the connection between Noah and Lewis. So I didn't love this one, but I do think there are a lot of cool parts about it. So this book comes out September 9th. If you like, I know this is not marketed as YA, but it really does feel kind of young. If you like a YA crime espionage sort of thriller with fantasy elements, I think you could really get along with this one. It comes out September 9th, so if you want to check it out at your library, request it at your library, or go pick up a copy for yourself, I think that's going to be the audience here. I don't think if you're going into it expecting full-fledged horror, I think you're going to be a little disappointed. So go in knowing that it's like an Indiana Jonesy style of quest, but with fantasy elements, and I think you'll enjoy it if that pitch sounds good to you. I did really appreciate what this was trying to say about colonialism and about the fact that Lewis as a main character is a gay black man, and I appreciated that commentary. I do wish there was more of it in here. So I do hope that this book finds its right audience, but I am now moving on to the third and final book of this vlog, which is The Burial Tide by Neil Sharpson. I am 50% of the way through The Burial Tide so far, and I am absolutely loving it. If there's one thing that I just absolutely love about Neil Sharpson's work so far out of the 2 books that I've read, Knock Knock Open Wide and this one, is that he knows how to immediately launch you into such a creepy story. Knock Knock Open Wide has one of the most genuinely terrifying horror scenes that I have ever read, and whenever I am driving alone in the country at night, I think about that scene. I think about that scene a lot, and I really loved his debut, and then this one is absolutely meeting those expectations that I had and more. This book starts off very explosively. We follow a woman who wakes up and realizes that she has been buried alive. So chapter 1, we are following this woman breaking out of her grave, crawling out from the ground, trying to escape, and eventually making her way back to the surface, and has to figure out what to do from there, because not only has she woken up from the dead seemingly because she was buried, but she has no recollection of her life before then. She has no idea of her name, who she is, who she's related to, what her life was like. It's only after breaking into the house of someone else because she is so ravenous and just desperately needs some food that she learns from other people in the small town that she is at what her name is, who her partner is, where she lives, and all of that. She is trying to recover her memories. She is told her name is Mara. She gets help from the town's doctor who explains to her the circumstances behind her dying and being buried and possibly resurrecting, like what was going on with all of that, and then starts helping her get her memories back, because Mara still cannot remember anything, not about her own life, not about her partner, and not about any of the other inhabitants of this small town on this coastal island of Inishbofin. Mara is having a hard time recovering her memories, and she starts to feel, as she's desperately trying to settle back into her old routines with her partner and her community, she starts just getting these really tiny niggling feelings. She starts seeing little clues. People start acting a little bit weird, and she starts to worry that none of this was actually her life and that everyone in the town is lying to her, which seems crazy because why would a whole town collude on something so crazy? But she starts finding these clues, and you and Mara are wondering that actually that might be what is happening here. So this gives very much like a Twin Peaks style of vibe. This town is very, very strange. It's very small, very rural, very isolated. Everybody knows everybody else. We are mainly following Mara and Declan. Declan is an outsider to this island. His grandmother grew up in this community, and he has come back to rent out a cabin and do kind of a writer's sabbatical, and his house is actually the house that Mara breaks into after she is resurrected from the dead. And so he feels like not a part of this community already, and he also kind of feels like people are hiding things from Mara and from him and from outsiders to this community. We also get a little snippet sometimes of one-offs of other people in this town, so we are seeing, like, we don't know what's going on, and that's what I love about this one, is it just feels so bizarre. It is playing with Irish mythology and folklore, and just this isolated setting I think makes for a perfect powder keg for what is all about to happen, because Mara's desperately trying to figure out what her life looked like beforehand, and you'd think that would be kind of easy in this day and age with Google and just access to the internet and all of that, but she's finding it very surprisingly hard to find out anything about herself that hasn't been told to her by other people. So this is so tense and suspenseful, and just I'm so uneasy. From chapter 1, you're so uneasy with Mara's situation, and just continuously on from there. When she is rescued from dying and then being resurrected, you think that the danger is over for her, but it never really is. And I'm really loving that sense of tension, that sense of unease, that sense of a town where where you feel like maybe everything feels like kind of perfect, but very unsettlingly so. So I'm really loving this one. Cannot wait to figure out what is happening in this small town. I'm gonna go get back to reading. I will check back in later when I've finished it. So I finished The Burial Tide by Neil Sharpson, and I loved this one. This is definitely one of the best horror books that I've read so far this year, and I would not be surprised if it wound up on my list of top 10 books of the year. This was just so incredibly excellent, and it combines so many elements that I love in a horror novel, and I just thought this was really great and definitely cemented this author as an auto-read author for me. I loved the setting of this one, the island with the small town, such an isolated and creepy setting. I already mentioned Twin Peaks in my last update, but for this one, I also think this evokes like X-Files. There are a number of Monster of the Week episodes where Scully and Mulder go to very small, idyllic towns, and things are just so incredibly off, but in a way where it's like everything seems just altogether too perfect. I loved the way that the mystery was incorporated in here. We'd get some answers and then we'd be provided with more questions. I thought the pacing there was really well done, keeping my interest, keeping the tension, and also keeping the mystery from start to finish. I also really enjoyed the found family aspects in here. I especially loved the relationship, the friendship between Mara and Declan, and I just thought like their banter was so fun. You immediately bought into the fact that they were friends and they were kind of trauma bonded over this horrific experience and then quickly grew to trust each other. I just thought the friendships in this book were really great. There were some funny moments, some very great one-liners, and there were also some very effective scares. So if you are intrigued by small town horror settings, if you're looking for a book that explores Irish mythology, Irish folk tales, and you just want a really excellently paced horror, then go ahead and check this book out. It comes out September 9th, so make sure to go pick it up in bookstores or request it from your local library. I'm definitely going to be getting my hands on a copy of this one because I just loved it so much, and I'm really glad that I did this vlog because I definitely think that I've found one of my favorite books of the year. So that is going to be it for this vlog. This vlog is actually coming out a little bit later than anticipated, so by the time you're watching this, all three of these books are actually all out already. So if you're interested in any of them, you can definitely go to any bookstore. They should be there. Or again, if you don't want to buy these books or if you don't have the funds, that's okay too. Definitely request them from your library because that still really helps authors by getting their books in libraries. So thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, let me know which of these books you're most interested in checking out, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my content, stay safe, stay spooky, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!